My parents used my credit card to buy my sister a new phone and clothes. I didn't scream. I froze the card and left a statement on the table. My mom's panic was unreal. So there I was, sitting in my Honda Civic after another long day at work, scrolling through my phone notifications like I always do. You know how it is, checking texts, Instagram, the usual stuff. But then I see this alert from Chase Bank that made my stomach drop faster than a rock. $1,500. Gone. Just like that. At first I'm thinking maybe someone skimmed my card at some sketchy gas station or something. Happens all the time, right? So I'm frantically opening my banking app, praying it's just some mistake. But nope. There it was, clear as day. Apple Store, $450. Some bougie boutique downtown, $800. A makeup store at the mall, $250. My heart's beating like I just ran a marathon. The thing is, I hadn't been to any of those places. Not even close. I work in accounting at this mid-sized firm, and let me tell you, I'm not exactly rolling in dough. Every dollar matters when you're trying to pay off student loans and save for your own place. I still live in this tiny apartment that smells like the neighbor's cooking and has paper-thin walls. I'm sitting there in my car, hands shaking, calling the fraud department. The customer service lady is super nice, asking me all these questions. About recent purchases. Did I authorize these transactions? No. Did I lend my card to anyone? Absolutely not. Did any family members have access to my card information? That last question hit different. My family. I thought about it for a hot second. My parents had helped me move last month, and I remember leaving my purse on the kitchen counter while we were hauling boxes. But no way. They wouldn't do that, would they? The bank lady puts a temporary freeze on my account while they investigate. She's explaining their process, but honestly, my mind was elsewhere. I kept thinking about my little sister Selena. She's 22 and still lives at home, but she always has the latest everything. New iPhone every year, designer clothes, expensive makeup. Meanwhile, I'm over here buying generic cereal and clipping coupons like some old school grandma. I drive home in complete silence. No music, no podcasts. Just me and my racing thoughts. Walking up to my apartment, I'm already planning what I'm going to say to my parents. Maybe there's some explanation. Maybe someone really did steal my info, and it's all just a crazy coincidence. But deep down, something felt off. Really off. Update. Hey everyone. Thanks for all the support in the comments. You're right. I needed to dig deeper. What I found next completely changed everything I thought I knew about my family. I spent the next 2 hours going through my credit card statements like some kind of detective. 3 months back, there were smaller charges I hadn't really noticed. $20 here, $40 there. A coffee shop I'd never been to. Some online store I'd never heard of. Looking at it all together, it was like seeing a puzzle come together, and the picture was ugly. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. Family, dinner Sunday? Making your favorite pot roast. Any other day I would have been excited. Mom's pot roast is honestly legendary. But now, staring at these statements, that text felt different. Almost manipulative. I decided to do something I never thought I'd have to do. I called my cousin Jake. He works in digital forensics for the police department, and I figured if anyone could help me figure this out, it'd be him. Jake's always been straight with me, never sugarcoated anything. Hey cuz, weird question, I said when he picked up. If someone was using your credit card without permission, how would you prove it? Jake got real quiet. Everything okay? You sound stressed. I told him everything, the charges, the timeline, my suspicions. He listened without interrupting, which I appreciated because I was word vomiting all over the place. Look, he said finally. If this is family, you gotta be real careful. But if it's fraud, it's fraud. Doesn't matter who's doing it. You want my advice? Screenshot everything, save all your statements, and maybe check your sister's social media. People always post their new stuff. That last part hit me like a truck. Selena's Instagram. I hadn't looked at it in weeks because honestly, seeing her constant shopping hauls just made me feel bad about my own situation. I opened Instagram with shaky fingers. Her most recent post was from 3 days ago. A mirror. Selfie with a brand new iPhone 15 Pro Max in that pretty blue color. Caption, feeling blessed, new phone who dis? The post before that showed her at some fancy restaurant downtown, wearing this gorgeous designer dress I'd never seen before. And before that, a makeup haul video with products that probably cost more than my rent. The timeline matched perfectly with my credit card charges. I felt sick, like actually nauseous. My own family, my parents, who raised me to be honest and work hard for everything I wanted. My sister, who I'd always looked out for, even when she was being a spoiled brat. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about all the times my parents had lectured me about financial responsibility, how they'd refused to help me with college, because it builds character, and I needed to learn the value of money. How they'd made me get a job at 15, while Selena got to focus on cheerleading and hanging out with friends. The next morning, I called Chase again. This time, I was ready to file a formal fraud report. The representative was different, but just as helpful. I explained that I'd identified the likely source of the unauthorized charges, and they walked me through the process of disputing everything. Ma'am, I have to ask, if these charges were made by family members, are you prepared to potentially press charges? The investigation might lead to that. I took a deep breath. Yes, fraud is fraud. After I hung up, I felt this weird mix of empowerment and sadness. Empowered because I was finally standing up for myself, but sad because this whole situation meant my family had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I decided to wait until Sunday's dinner to confront them. I wanted to see if they'd come clean, on their own, maybe apologize and offer to pay me back. Part of me was still hoping this was all some big misunderstanding. Sunday rolled around, and I showed up at my parents' house with a folder full of printed statements and screenshots. My dad was in his usual spot on the couch, watching some football game. Mom was in the kitchen, and I could smell that pot roast from the driveway. "Hey, honey," Mom called out when I walked in. Perfect timing, food's almost ready. Selena was sprawled on the living room floor, scrolling through her phone, the same phone that was probably bought with my money. She looked up and waved casually, like everything was totally normal. We sat down for dinner, and everything felt surreal. Here we were, having this nice family meal, while I'm sitting on evidence that they'd basically robbed me. The pot roast was delicious as always, but I could barely taste it. Update. The dinner confrontation was intense. My mom literally went pale when I put the statements on the table. But what happened next with my dad's reaction shocked me even more than the theft itself. About halfway through dinner, I couldn't take it anymore. The fake small talk, the pretending everything was fine. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder. "So," I said, keeping my voice as calm as possible, "I need to ask you guys about something." I spread the credit card statements across the table, right next to the mashed potatoes. The mood shifted instantly. It was like someone had sucked all the air out of the room. "What's this, sweetheart?" Dad asked, but his voice had this weird edge to it. "These are my credit card statements. See these charges?" I pointed to the highlighted items. Apple Store, $450. Nordstrom, $800. Sephora, $250. None of these were made by me. Mom had gone completely white, like ghost white. She was staring at the papers like they might catch fire. Selena looked confused, but also nervous. "Why are you showing us your credit card stuff?" "Because," I said, looking directly at my parents, "the bank traced these charges. They were made with my physical card, and the only people who had access to my card information are sitting at this table." The silence was deafening. You could hear the neighbor's dog barking outside, the hum of the refrigerator, everything except anyone talking. Finally, Mom spoke up, her voice barely a whisper. "Honey, we can explain." "Oh, you can explain?" I felt my voice getting louder despite trying to stay calm. "Please, by all means, explain how my credit card was used to buy my sister expensive gifts without my knowledge or permission." Dad set down his fork and crossed his arms. "Now hold on, we were going to tell you." "When? When were you going to tell me? After I went into debt? After my credit got ruined? When exactly?" "We were going to pay you back," Mom said, tears starting to form in her eyes. "Selena needed those things for job interviews, and we just didn't have the cash right then." "Job interviews?" I looked at Selena, who was now staring at her plate. "What job interviews require a $1,500 shopping spree?" "It wasn't $1,500 worth," Selena mumbled. "Actually, it was exactly $1,573, and that's just from this month. I found smaller charges going back 3 months. Dad's face was getting red, which usually meant he was about to blow up. "Look, we're family. We help each other out. It's not like we were never going to pay you back." "Help each other out?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "When have you ever helped me out? When I was working 2 jobs to pay for college? When I was eating ramen noodles for dinner because I couldn't afford groceries? When I asked for help with my security deposit on my apartment and you said no?" "That's different," Mom said weakly. "How is it different? How is stealing my money to buy Selena luxury items any different from me asking for legitimate help?" "We didn't steal anything," Dad said, his voice getting louder. "We borrowed it. Borrowing implies permission. This is theft. And you know what? I already reported it as fraud to the bank." The room went dead silent again. Mom started crying for real now, not just tears but full-on sobbing. Selena looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "You reported us?" Dad asked, his face now completely red. "I reported unauthorized use of my credit card, because that's what this is. We're your family," Mom choked out between sobs. "Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't lie and manipulate and use each other's credit cards without permission." Started gathering up the statements. "The bank is investigating. They'll probably want to talk to all of you. And just so you know, I've frozen the card so there won't be any more surprise shopping sprees." Dad stood up too, now towering over me. "You ungrateful little—" "Don't," I cut him off. "Don't you dare call me ungrateful. I've worked for everything. I have. Every single thing. While you've been handing Selena whatever she wants on a silver platter, I've been busting my butt to build a life for myself." "She's your sister," Mom pleaded, "and you're my parents. You were supposed to protect me, not rob me." Selena finally spoke up. "I didn't know they were using your card, I swear." I pulled out my phone and showed her Instagram posts. "Really? You had no idea where these expensive gifts were coming from? The phone, the clothes, the makeup? You just thought Mom and Dad suddenly had extra money lying around?" She looked at the screen and her face crumpled. I thought maybe they'd been saving up or something. Or something is right." I headed toward the door, done with this whole scene. But Dad wasn't finished. "If you go through with this fraud report, you're going to destroy this family." I turned back to look at him. "I didn't destroy anything. You did that when you decided to steal from me." Update. The aftermath has been absolutely wild. My extended family found out what happened, and let's just say my parents are not the popular ones right now. But there's something else I discovered that made this whole situation even crazier. The next few days were a blur of phone calls and drama. First, my Aunt Carol called. Apparently, Mom had reached out to her, trying to get family members on their side. But instead of sympathy, Carol was furious. They did what? She practically yelled through the phone. With your credit card? Without asking? Then Uncle Mike called. Then my grandparents. Then my cousin Sarah. Word was spreading through the family like wildfire, and nobody was taking my parents' side. Turns out financial betrayal hits different when it's family, and everyone understood that what they did was seriously messed up. But here's where it gets really interesting. My cousin Jake, the one who works in digital forensics, called me with some news. Hey, remember how I told you to check Selena's social media? Well, I did some digging on my own, and you might want to sit down for this. Apparently, Selena had been posting about her expensive purchases for months. Not just the recent stuff, but going way back. Jake had screenshots of everything. Designer bags, expensive dinners, weekend trips to fancy hotels, all of it timestamped and tagged with locations. The pattern goes back almost a year, Jake explained. And based on what you've told me about your parents' financial situation, there's no way they could afford all this legitimately. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about my credit card. This had been going on for months, maybe longer. My parents had been living beyond their means, probably racking up debt, just to keep Selena happy. I called Chase back and requested a full investigation going back 18 months. What they found made my stomach turn. Not just my card, but other suspicious activity too. My parents had apparently been juggling multiple credit cards, taking cash advances, basically running a house of cards that was bound to collapse. The bank investigator was sympathetic, but thorough. Ma'am, this appears to be part of a larger pattern of financial fraud. We're going to need to involve law enforcement. Meanwhile, my parents were in full panic mode. Mom called me crying every day, begging me to drop the investigation. Dad left angry voicemails calling me selfish and vindictive. But the thing that really got to me was when Selena finally reached out. She texted me at like 2 in the morning. I'm so sorry. I really didn't know about the credit card. Can we talk? Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her for coffee. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, no makeup, wearing an old hoodie instead of her usual designer clothes. I've been thinking about everything, she started, stirring her latte nervously. And you're right. I should have questioned where all the money was coming from. Should have? I raised an eyebrow. Okay, I did question it, but they always had some explanation. Dad got a bonus, Mom had savings, whatever. I wanted to believe it because it was easier than thinking about the alternative. The alternative being that they were stealing? She nodded, tears starting to fall. I've been looking at my Instagram at all the stuff I posted. It's so embarrassing. I look like this spoiled brat who doesn't care about anything except shopping and showing off. Because that's exactly what you were being. I know. She wiped her eyes with a napkin. And the worst part is, it wasn't even making me happy. Like, I'd get something new and feel good for a day, maybe a week, and then I'd want something else. It was like this endless cycle. I felt a tiny bit of sympathy for her, but I wasn't ready to forgive and forget just yet. What are you going to do now? I asked. I'm returning everything I can. The phone, the clothes that still have tags, the makeup I haven't opened. I already started yesterday. That's a good start. And I'm getting a job. A real job. Not just babysitting for the neighbors sometimes. I applied at like 10 places this week. I had to admit, I was surprised. Selena had never shown much interest in working before. There's something else, she said, looking uncomfortable. Mom and Dad are in real trouble, like serious financial trouble. The house might get foreclosed on. My heart sank. As angry as I was, the thought of my parents losing their home was hard to hear. How bad is it? Bad. They've been using credit cards to pay other credit cards. Dad took out a second mortgage last year that I didn't even know about. They're drowning. This explained a lot. The desperation, the justification, the willingness to steal from their own daughter. They weren't just enabling Selena's shopping habits. They were trying to keep their entire financial house of cards from collapsing. But even knowing this, I couldn't bring myself to feel too sorry for them. They had choices. They could have cut back on expenses, gotten second jobs, asked family for help legitimately. Instead, they chose to commit fraud. The investigation wrapped up 2 weeks later. The bank concluded that my parents had indeed used my card without authorization, and they were liable for all charges plus fees. The total came to over $2,000 when you included interest and penalties. My parents were forced to sell Selena's car, a relatively new Honda they'd bought her for graduation, to pay back what they owed me. They also had to enter into a payment plan with the bank for the additional fees. But the real consequences were just beginning. Dad lost his job when his employer found out about the fraud investigation. Apparently, working in finance while being investigated for credit, card fraud is not a good look. Mom had to take on extra shifts at her part-time retail job, which was barely enough to cover their basic expenses. The house did end up going into foreclosure. They tried to fight it, but with Dad unemployed and their credit completely destroyed, there wasn't much they could do. They ended up moving in with my grandparents, which was humbling for everyone involved. As for Selena, she surprised me by actually following through on her promises. She got a job at a local restaurant and started paying for her own expenses. She also started seeing a therapist to work through what she called her shopping addiction and entitlement issues. The family dinners stopped. The group chat went quiet. Holidays became awkward affairs where everyone pretended everything was fine while dancing around the elephant in the room. Some people might think I was too harsh, that I should have handled it privately, worked something out within the family, forgiven and forgotten. But I don't regret it. Not for a second. What my parents did wasn't just theft, it was a betrayal of trust that cut deeper than any financial loss. They taught me through their actions that my financial security, my credit, my future, mattered less than keeping Selena. happy. They showed me that I was the responsible one who could be taken advantage of, while she was the precious one who needed to be protected and spoiled. I took the money I got back from them and did something I'd never done before. I booked a solo trip to Europe, 2 weeks in Italy, staying in actual hotels instead of hostels, eating at nice restaurants, buying myself things I wanted without checking my bank balance first. Sitting in a cafe in Rome, drinking wine and watching people walk by, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, completely free. Free from the obligation to be the responsible one, the understanding one, the one who always puts family first even when family doesn't put me first. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "We miss you, can we please talk?" I looked at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Maybe someday we'd rebuild our relationship, but it would have to be on completely different terms. Terms where I was treated as an equal member of the family, not a bank account with legs. The sunset was beautiful that evening in Rome. I ordered another glass of wine and toasted to myself, to standing up for what's right, to protecting what's mine, and to learning that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to hold them accountable for their actions. Back home now, my life is different, better. I've got boundaries I never had before, and I'm not afraid to enforce them. My credit score is recovering, my savings account is growing, and most importantly, I sleep well at night knowing that I'm the only one with access to my finances. My parents eventually found a small apartment and are slowly rebuilding their lives. Dad got a new job, though it pays less than his old one. Mom is working full-time now. Selena moved out of my grandparents' house and got her own place with roommates. We've started talking again, slowly. Family therapy was suggested, and we're all considering it. But the dynamic has changed permanently. I'm no longer the pushover daughter who can be taken advantage of. I'm an adult woman who knows her worth and isn't afraid to protect it. And honestly, that feels pretty amazing.